Part 1. The First Day at Thermopylae. The story you've heard isn't the real story. According to the movie, 300 fearless Spartans stood alone against millions of Persians in a glorious last stand. It's one of the most famous battles in history. But what if I told you the real story was even more incredible, because those 300 Spartans were never truly alone? The Persian army wasn't just fighting brave soldiers. They were fighting one of the greatest military strategies ever devised. And perhaps the most astonishing part of all, the Spartans knew they were going to die before they ever marched to battle. Yet they went anyway, not because they believed they would win, but because they believed that some causes were worth dying for. This is the true story of Thermopylae. And by the end, you may never look at the movie 300 the same way again. The year was 480 B.C. Far to the east, the mighty Persian Empire stretched farther than the eye could imagine. It ruled over dozens of kingdoms, countless cities, and millions of people. Its king, Xerxes, believed there was only one land left worthy of conquest: Greece. Years earlier, his father, King Darius, had suffered a humiliating defeat at the Battle of Marathon. Before dying, Darius gave his son one final command: do not forget the Athenians. Xerxes never did. For years, he prepared for revenge. Thousands of engineers built bridges across the Hellespont. Roads were carved through mountains. Supply lines stretched across continents. Every corner of the empire contributed soldiers. Persians, Medes, Egyptians, Babylonians, Phoenicians, even warriors from India marched beneath Xerxes' banner. Never before had the ancient world seen an army so enormous. When the preparations were complete, Xerxes stood overlooking the sea. One of his generals smiled. No Greek city can stand against this. Xerxes looked toward the west. They will kneel. News of the invasion spread across Greece like wildfire. City after city panicked. Some surrendered without a fight. Others argued endlessly. Should they negotiate? Should they flee? Should they resist? In Sparta, however, the answer seemed obvious: fight. But there was a problem. A sacred religious festival, the Carneia, had begun. According to Spartan law, the full army could not march until the festival ended. Messengers gathered before King Leonidas. One elder spoke carefully: the laws forbid us from marching. Another added, if we break them, we betray everything Sparta stands for. The room fell silent. Leonidas looked around the chamber. If we wait, he paused, there may be no Greece left to defend. No one answered. Finally, Leonidas rose. Then I will go. One council member frowned. With how many men? Leonidas answered calmly. 300. The room became silent once again. Not because 300 was enough. Everyone knew it wasn't. Because everyone understood what that number meant. It was not an army. It was a sacrifice. But there was something the movie rarely tells you. The Spartans were not the only Greeks at Thermopylae. Thousands of warriors from other Greek city-states answered the call. Thespians, Thebans, Corinthians, Arcadians, Phocians, Locrians. Together, nearly 7,000 Greeks gathered at a narrow mountain pass called Thermopylae. The name meant the hot gates. It was unlike any battlefield. Mountains rose on one side. The sea pressed against the other. Only a narrow strip of land remained between them. Leonidas studied the pass carefully. One Spartan captain walked beside him. Is this where we make our stand? Leonidas nodded. They have more men. The captain smiled. Much more. Leonidas knelt and pressed his hand into the rocky ground. They cannot surround us here. He looked up. They will have to come through us. That single decision would become one of the greatest examples of battlefield strategy in history. Days later, the Persian army finally appeared. Dust filled the horizon long before the soldiers could be seen. Then came the banners, thousands of them, then the cavalry, then endless ranks of infantry. The ground itself seemed to tremble. One young Greek soldier stared in disbelief. "There are so many," another whispered. "I cannot even see where the army ends." The Persian line stretched farther than anyone imagined possible. When Xerxes arrived, he laughed. "Is this all Greece has sent?" A court advisor bowed. "It appears so, my king." Xerxes smiled. "They will surrender." He waited 4 days, 4 full days. He expected fear to do his work. He believed no sane man would choose death, but every morning, the Greeks remained. One Persian scout returned with strange news. "My king? What is it? The Spartans?" "Yes, they are combing their hair." The Persian court burst into laughter. One noble shook his head. "They prepare for death like women prepare for festivals." But a Greek exile serving Xerxes grew serious. His name was Demaratus. He had once been a Spartan king. He stepped forward. "My king." Xerxes looked annoyed. "What now?" Demaratus spoke quietly. "When Spartans prepare for certain death," he paused, "they groom themselves." The laughter stopped. "They are not preparing to surrender. They are preparing to kill as many of your men as possible." For the first time, Xerxes' smile disappeared. On the morning of the 5th day, the Persian king sent one final message. A rider approached the Greek lines carrying a white flag. He stopped before Leonidas. "My king offers mercy." Leonidas remained silent. The messenger continued, "Lay down your weapons." The Greeks watched. No one moved. Finally, Leonidas smiled. "Come and take them." The messenger stared in disbelief. "You understand who stands before you?" Leonidas stepped closer. "And you understand who stands before you." The rider turned and galloped back toward the Persian camp. When Xerxes heard the answer, his face hardened. "So be it." He stood. "Attack." The first Persian wave marched forward. Thousands advanced with shields raised. Confident, disciplined, certain victory was moments away. Leonidas slowly raised his spear. Every Spartan lowered his shield. Silence filled the narrow pass. Then, "Spartans!" Leonidas roared. "What is your profession?" 300 voices thundered back. "Ho! Ho! Ho!" The mountains echoed with their answer. The Persians charged. The Greeks did not move. 10 steps. 5. 3. Leonidas shouted one word. "Now!" The Spartan wall exploded forward. Not backward. Forward. Their spears struck with terrifying precision. The first Persian ranks collapsed instantly. The narrow pass worked exactly as Leonidas had planned. The Persians couldn't use their overwhelming numbers. Only a handful could fight at one time. Every fallen Persian blocked those behind him. Wave after wave crashed into the Greek shield wall. Again, and again, and again. By sunset, the ground at Thermopylae was covered with Persian dead. The battle had only just begun. Part 2. The second day, the betrayal, and the last stand. The first day ended in disaster for Persia. The greatest army on earth had attacked with overwhelming numbers. And yet, they had barely moved the Greek line. As darkness settled over Thermopylae, the Persian camp was unusually quiet. Thousands of wounded men cried out in pain. Fires burned across the valley. Armor lay scattered everywhere. Xerxes sat inside his royal tent, staring at a map of the pass. One of his commanders broke the silence. "My king, perhaps we should wait." Xerxes slowly looked up. "Wait?" The commander nodded. "They cannot stay here forever. Hunger will defeat them if our swords cannot." Another general shook his head. "The empire has marched too far to be delayed by 300 Spartans." Xerxes clenched his fist. "I promised my father that Greece would kneel." He stood and struck the table. "Tomorrow, we break them." At dawn, the Greeks were already awake. The Spartans cleaned their shields, sharpened their spears, adjusted their crimson cloaks. A young Arcadian soldier looked at the Spartans in amazement. "Don't they ever get tired?" One Spartan smiled. "We trained our entire lives for moments like this." The young soldier hesitated. "Aren't you afraid?" The Spartan looked toward the Persian camp stretching across the horizon. "Of course." The young man looked surprised. "I thought Spartans never feared death." The Spartan chuckled softly. "Only fools feel no fear." He tightened the strap on his shield. "Courage is doing your duty despite it." Leonidas overheard the conversation. He walked over and rested a hand on the young soldier's shoulder. "Fear keeps a man alive." He paused, but discipline tells him when to stand. As the sun climbed higher, the Persian drums began to beat again. Boom, boom, boom. Thousands of soldiers marched forward. This time Xerxes had a different plan. He summoned his most feared warriors, the Immortals, 10,000 elite soldiers. Their armor gleamed beneath the morning sun. One Persian officer bowed. "My king, no army has ever stood before the Immortals." Xerxes smiled again. "They won't today." The Immortals advanced with absolute confidence. The Greeks watched in silence. One Thespian soldier whispered, "They look different." A Spartan beside him nodded. "They're better." The Thespian swallowed nervously. "Should we be worried?" The Spartan answered without taking his eyes off the enemy. "They should." The clash shook the mountains. The Immortals fought harder than any soldiers before them. They attacked relentlessly. Spears shattered, swords flashed, shields splintered, several Greeks fell. But every step forward cost Persia dearly. Leonidas watched carefully. He wasn't just fighting, he was thinking. Again and again, he ordered his men to pull back slightly. The Persians rushed forward, believing the Greeks were finally breaking. Then Leonidas shouted, "Turn!" Instantly, the Greeks wheeled around in perfect formation. The Persians suddenly found themselves trapped in the narrow pass, unable to retreat, unable to maneuver. The Spartan shield slammed into them. Spears struck with terrifying speed. Within moments, the Immortals were retreating. For the second straight day, the greatest soldiers in the Persian Empire had failed. Far above the battlefield, someone else was watching. A local Greek named Ephialtes. He knew the mountains better than anyone, and he knew something the Greeks hoped the Persians would never discover. There was another path, a narrow mountain trail that wound behind the Greek position. Late that night, Ephialtes entered the Persian camp. The guards brought him before Xerxes. The king looked down at the stranger. "Who are you?" "A man with valuable information." Xerxes leaned forward. "Speak." "There is another road." The tent fell silent. Ephialtes pointed toward the mountains. "A hidden path. It leads behind the Spartans." One Persian general frowned. "Why would you betray your own people?" Ephialtes smiled. "What is loyalty compared to reward?" Xerxes slowly stood. "If your information is true," he motioned to a servant carrying bags of silver, "you will be remembered." Ephialtes bowed deeply. "I already have been." That single act of betrayal would change history forever. Before sunrise, a Greek scout sprinted toward Leonidas. Breathing heavily, he fell to one knee. "My king." "They found the mountain path. The Persians are behind us." Silence spread through the Greek camp. Everyone understood. The trap had become their prison. One captain spoke first. "We must retreat." Another disagreed. "If we run now, they'll catch us in the open." Leonidas looked toward the mountains, then toward his men. Finally, he spoke. "The road to southern Greece must stay open." He turned to the allied commanders. "Take your men." One protested immediately. "We will stay and fight with you." Leonidas shook his head. "No. If all of us die here, there will be no one left to defend Greece." The commander lowered his head. Reluctantly, most of the Greek forces began withdrawing, but not everyone left. 700 Thespians refused to abandon the Spartans. Their commander stepped forward. "We came here as free men. We leave only with victory, or not at all." Even a group of Thebans remained, though history still debates whether they stayed willingly. By sunrise, roughly 1,500 Greeks remained, not just 300. Men from different cities, different families, different lives, united by one decision: stand. Leonidas gathered his Spartans one final time. He looked at each face. Many had marched beside him for years. Some had children waiting at home. Others had never even married. One young Spartan asked quietly, "My king, will anyone remember us?" Leonidas smiled. "That isn't why we're here." He looked across the valley. "We are here, so Greece will have a tomorrow." Another Spartan laughed. "Then let's make today expensive." The men around him smiled. Some laughed. Others simply tightened their grip on their shields. No speeches, no dramatic goodbyes, just soldiers accepting what had to be done. As the Persian army surrounded the pass, Xerxes sent one final offer. "Leonidas, kneel, and you will live." The Spartan king answered without hesitation, "If I kneel, my people lose more than my life." Xerxes sighed. "So be it." The final assault began. This time, the Persians attacked from both directions. The Greeks fought like men possessed. Spears broke, so they drew swords. Swords snapped, so they fought with daggers. When even those were gone, they fought with their hands, with stones, with broken shields. Ancient historian Herodotus wrote that the fighting became so fierce that many Persians were pushed into the sea, while others trampled one another in panic. Even after Leonidas fell, the Spartans didn't retreat. They formed a circle around his body. One soldier shouted, "We do not leave our king." Another answered, "Not while we still breathe." Again and again, they drove the Persians back. Only after waves of arrows darkened the sky did the final defenders finally fall. The pass grew silent. Thermopylae was over. But here's what the movie 300 doesn't fully capture. The battle wasn't important because 300 men died. It was important because thousands of Greeks fought together, because one small force delayed one of the largest invasions in history, because their sacrifice bought precious time for the Greek city-states to prepare. That time would prove decisive. Only months later, the Greek navy crushed Persia at the Battle of Salamis. The following year, the Persian invasion ended in defeat at Plataea, without the stand at Thermopylae. Those victories might never have happened. There's also a deeper lesson hidden beneath the armor and the legends. Most people believe courage means feeling no fear. The Spartans knew better. They trained until discipline became stronger than fear. When panic spreads through a group, it spreads like fire. But discipline spreads too. One calm leader can steady hundreds. One person who refuses to run can inspire others to stand. Leonidas understood something that modern psychology continues to confirm. People don't become extraordinary in extraordinary moments. They fall back on the habits they've built every ordinary day before them. The Spartans didn't become disciplined at Thermopylae. Thermopylae simply revealed the discipline they had practiced for a lifetime. So here's the question the story leaves us with. When life places you at your own Thermopylae, when the odds are against you, when fear whispers that you should quit, what habits will you fall back on? Because history remembers the 300 Spartans. But their greatest victory wasn't defeating thousands of Persians. It was proving that discipline, unity, and purpose can outlive even death. And perhaps that's the part Hollywood could never fully capture. If this story changed the way you see the Battle of Thermopylae, then you're going to love what comes next. Because history is filled with battles that were even more unbelievable than the legends you've heard. Subscribe now and join us as we uncover the real stories behind history's greatest wars, legendary commanders, and the moments that changed the world forever. And before you go, tell me in the comments, do you think you would have stood beside Leonidas, or would you have chosen to retreat? There's no right answer, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, history isn't just about the past, it's about the choices that shaped our future.